evening. Welcome to the Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's Big Stories. Authorities say they believe the Chinese student kidnapped in Taguig that case was all about the money, but at the same breath, they say that no ransom was paid since the victim was rescued.
Speaking for the first time about the impeachment, Senator Hontiveros believes there is no better time than before the new Congress in July to put Vice President Sara Duterte on trial.
In barely 1 month as president and CEO of PhilHealth, and Dr. Edwin Mercado has vowed to cure the ills of the state health insurer. We will ask him on exactly how he plans to do that when he joins us later on in the program.
Well, we're learning more about the abducted student of an exclusive school in Taguig who has been reunited with his parents, but apparently no arrests have yet been made and the kidnappers remain free.
It was also a harrowing ordeal for the victim, who was held for almost a week and came out of captivity with a severed finger.
And as the probe goes deeper, authorities find a link between the kidnapping and offshore gaming, which is now illegal here in the country. Maricel Halili has tonight's big story.
It's just money. Ayun lang talaga.
In so many words, Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla bared the motive behind the latest abduction of a high school student in Taguig. The 14-year-old boy from an exclusive school who's said to be Chinese was reunited with his family 5 days after he was taken. Citing initial investigation, this was how the kidnapping went, according to the DILG. The teenager was supposed to head home from school at 2:40 in the afternoon, but on February 20, around 3:45 p.m., he was abducted. His parents reported him missing the following day, and authorities, including those from the PNP's anti-kidnapping group, went to work. They found a vehicle used to fetch the student in San Rafael, Bulacan, with the driver dead. Inside the car were photos, duct tape, and several fingerprints. Soon after, the student's abductors asked for a ransom of $20 million or more than 1 billion pesos. The victim's family supposedly refused to pay the said amount. In time, the kidnappers released a video showing one of the boy's fingers being cut. It was at this point that the parents asked for proof of life.
Pinakita yung bata na kumakanta ng paboritong awitin ng kanyang nakababatang kapatid. Kumanta yung bata, nakangiti naman, at nakita na at mula sa video niya ay mukhang in good health.
By Monday, February 24, the PNP anti-kidnapping group was able to identify the suspect's location via their very own cell phone signals. A hot pursuit operation was immediately carried out. Hours later, at around 8 in the evening, the victim was found in Parañaque in his pajamas, his hands bandaged. The kidnappers were nowhere to be found.
The choice was pursuing the vehicle or securing the child. Obviously, ang AKG, inuna yung bata. Kinuha yung bata, dinala sa ama, at nireconcile namin lahat.
Authorities say they already know who the abductors are and that the criminal group is known to police. According to the police, all suspects are still at large. Since January, police have recorded 8 kidnapping incidents of similar nature, with 5 cases supposedly already resolved. DILG Secretary Remulla insists all these are connected to offshore gaming operations that have since been banned by President Bongbong Marcos. During the probe in the latest kidnapping incident, it was found that the patriarch of the student's family was once involved in POGOs.
There's no revenge. There's no revenge. Crime syndicate lang talaga.
Initially po, ang isa sa miyembro ng pamilya po ay dati pong involved sa business ng POGO, na kung saan ang pinag-uusapan po nila yata yung pagbabayad ng mga hindi na mababayarang utang. Wala pong nireport si Director AKG tungkol sa previous involvement. Ang sinabi lang po, tinitingnan din po yung anggulo natin ng Chinese versus Chinese.
Even more worrisome, the suspects were getting help from Filipino ex-army and police officials.
We are definite na ang perpetrators ay ginamit ang kanilang mga former bodyguards na awol na ngayon sa serbisyo ng AFP at PNP.
For News 5, I'm Maricel Halili. We are One News.
Well, speaking of POGOs, the Bureau of Immigration says it's deported 98 Chinese POGO workers, most of whom were recently arrested at a scam hub in Parañaque. The Bureau said the Chinese embassy itself scheduled the charter flight bound for Xi'an, China. Of the 98 deported, 91 were part of a group of 450 individuals arrested at a commercial building in Parañaque on January 8, while the 7 had already been detained previously at the BI's detention facility in Taguig. BI is expediting deportations since the POGO ban took effect at the start of this year. Nearly half of all foreign nationals arrested this year have already been deported, but the BI chief admits that processing all of them take up huge resources from the government.
The longer they stay, the more resources the government has to allocate for their custody. This is why we take the fastest available option for their departure. Our priority is to clear them out as quickly as possible.
Senate Deputy Minority Leader Risa Hontiveros at a Kapihan sa Senado press conference this afternoon says she's worried about a possible resurgence in POGOs. Hontiveros said she's spoken to Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin about closing the loopholes in Executive Order 74, which bans POGOs, and essentially she wants PAGCOR-oriented casinos, licensed casinos, and junket agreements included in the ban.
Really very worrying na totoo, dumadami na naman yung mga kababayan natin, kahit yung mga kamag-anak natin, mga kaibigan, nagre-reklamo na, wow, may resurgence na naman ng mga scam texts and messages. Kumpara nga nung panahon ng Hulyo, Agosto, nung nakaraang taon, may realization na, talagang revenue stream din yan ng mga POGO. Kung yan ay may resurgence ngayon, tapos nangingidnap pa sila ng mga Pilipino, no? At kung mga estudyante pa, kung pumapatay pa sa mga driver o household staff nila, ay talagang nakakatakot.
Another big story today, the Philippine National Police confirmed it was their convoy that got reprimanded for plying the EDSA busway last night.
Sino po yan? Sino po yan na PNP? Chief? Alam niya na yan, sir eh. Sir, bawal pong dumaan dito, sir, na wala pong...
Hinahabol namin yung rally sa PNP to eh. Minumonitor namin yung rally.
Sir, wala kayong coordination, dapat tumawag kayo kagad kanina. Sir, alam niyo naman talaga dito na makikita tayo ng sir, oh. Nakikita tayo ng mga sibilyan na hindi
That's how the confrontation unfolded as operatives of the Special Action and Intelligence Committee for Transportation, or SAICT, stopped a motorcycle of the PNP Highway Patrol Group and 2 SUVs from continuing on the busway in EDSA Ortigas around 6 last night. According to SAICT, the convoy immediately left after the conversation because they had an emergency to attend to. But one of the motorcycles went back to get the violation ticket. PNP Chief General Romel Marbil did not confirm nor deny if he was in that convoy. But he said there was a legitimate emergency situation that the officials needed to attend to.
We are on call 24 hours a day. And there's a guideline sa bus po ng DOTR na the PNP vehicles, ang sinasabi, in case of emergency, national issue, you can use that. And there's an emergency that we have to call kasi meron po kaming operation last night.
Now, just last February 10th, traffic officers had also apprehended a PNP convoy that also name-dropped PNP Chief Marbil. But as per MMDA Regulation number 20-002, or the rules governing the EDSA busway, aside from buses, only the following are allowed to enter and traverse the bus lanes in EDSA. One is on-duty ambulances, fire trucks, and PNP vehicles, service vehicles performing their duties for the EDSA busway project, and the top 5 government officials, namely the President, Vice President, Senate President, House Speaker, and Chief Justice, as long as there is prior coordination. And that is why the PNP is now seeking a dialogue with SAICT, or the Special Action and Intelligence Committee for Transportation, especially since they were the ones who posted videos of those apprehended without blurring the plates.
Even the PNP, you have to respect the law. Yun lang po yung sasabi ko dun sa ano. Patikita lang po kayo kung talaga don't argue with them. Just give them the ticket, then you explain later. There's no need for you to announce to everybody sino nahuhuli mo. Kasi sa privacy, you have to respect. And you don't show yung mga plate numbers.
Meantime, Senator Risa Hontiveros has also spoken up on the impeachment issue during the same Kapihan sa Senado press conference today. She says they, meaning the 19th Congress, would have reneged on their duty if they did not tackle the complaint now.
Ang masasayang ay yung magawa naming mga 19th Congress Senators, yung aming buong tungkulin. Kasi magagawa namin yung mga preliminaries all the way to formulating the rules. Pero hindi namin mapapatupad yung rules na yon dahil kung mangyari yung timetable na sinasabi, 20th Congress Senate na ang magpapatupad nito. And we, the current senators, would have reneged on our duty to hear this impeachment complaint.
Sorry, hindi lang po yung sabi nyo na magiging pabaya sa responsibilidad ng Senado.
So yun, kung paubayan namin na sa 20th Congress Senate pa ang didinig sa impeachment complaint na yon, kaming mga senador ng 19th Congress would have reneged on our response. Umaasa ako na matutuloy yung All Senators Caucus para dun man lang sa caucus for starters mapag-usapan itutuloy na ba natin yung impeachment trial. And I think na
The All-Members Caucus is something that Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel had been asking for, which Senate President Francis Cheese Escudero finally said last week he's open to calling. And no confirmation yet on whether that's happening, though. Hontiveros is, of course, a vocal critic of the Dutertes, and last year went viral over her fiery exchange with Vice President Sara Duterte during the latter's hearing on her budget. Also, her political party, Akbayan, endorsed one of the impeachment complaints in the House. So how fair and impartial can Hontiveros be as a senator judge? Well, she says she will weigh the evidence on its own merits and look at everything with fresh eyes.
may namumuo akong opinion tungkol sa kanya bilang public official given the several important issues na na-imbestiga namin or napagdebatihan namin ni VP in the past several years. So, it's only human na that will come into play in my mind and memory pagdating sa impeachment trial. But, ang sinasabi ko kanina ay for the impeachment trial, as for any judge or justice or sa ibang bansa, jury members, the challenge is, yun na nga, try to listen to everything and think of everything as if new, as if fresh. So at least may ganong effort. So always try to be objective and I have always tried to be respectful. Bilang senator judge, eventually, kung matutuloy na ito, at gaya ng paalala ni SP, magiging impartial, fair, aaralin talaga at titimbangin yung mga ebidensya. Which of course, up to today, ay marami na at mabibigat sa isang parang plain na pagtingin. But again, the impeachment process is unique unto itself.
Speaking of Vice President Sara Duterte, she was spotted in Cebu City earlier today with dismissed Mayor Michael Rama. Duterte toured different barangays with Rama along with the rest of the members of Partido Barug Team Rama. Rama was suspended by the Ombudsman in September of last year for nepotism and grave misconduct. He is appealing his case before the Supreme Court. But the former Cebu City mayor, who is seeking re-election, insists that his candidacy remains valid as his name was already printed on the ballots. Meanwhile, the impeached vice president thanked Cebuanos for their warm welcome and left them with advice on how to vote this coming election.
Minsan sa unsa kahugaw sa politika, unsa kagrabe ang pagdaot, wala gihapon mawala ang pagtuo o pagsalig sa mga tao sa AKOA, sa amo ang opisina. Importante na siya sa mga employees no sa Office of the Vice President sa ilang moral nga naa ang katawhan nga nagsuporta sa ilang trabaho. Karong yung maabot na pinili ay paminaw nato ang mga saad sa mga politiko. Unya tan-aw nato kung unsa ang iyahang nabuhat kaniadto, unsa iyahang kapasidad, unsa iyahang abilidad. Dili ta mobuto tungod kay gikan sa political dynasty. Diba dili ta mobuto tungod kay anak tungod kay Duterte ang apelyido, anak ni Digong. Tan-aw na to ang tao. Unsa ba iyahang mabuhat, unsa iyahang nabuhat. O ang pinakaimportante sa tanan, katong ni saad siya sa iyahang mga buhaton para sa ato ang nasod, lahatag ba niya?
We're going to take a quick break, but coming up next, we're speaking to PhilHealth CEO and President Dr. Edwin Mercado when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. Not all claims had been settled when PhilHealth transferred 60 billion pesos back to the National Treasury. This was the admission of the state health insurer during the oral arguments at the Supreme Court yesterday, challenging the constitutionality of the transfer of PhilHealth's excess funds. Associate Justice Ami Lazaro Javier asked PhilHealth Senior Vice President Renato Limsiaco Jr. if all claims had been settled before the funds were sent back to the state coffers. Limsiaco said no because of a certain cut-off date. In the 4-hour hearing, Justice Javier also repeatedly emphasized that PhilHealth's funds should be used exclusively for its purposes and not diverted to unrelated programs. Still, PhilHealth's legal counsel insisted that the state health insurer remains financially sound. Government Corporate Counsel Solomon Hermosura told the SC that over 1 trillion peso worth of liabilities do not amount to an actual debt, but only future obligations based on estimates. The SC will hold their next oral arguments on March 4.
Certainly a lot of issues surrounding the state health insurer lately. Let's dive into this with Dr. Edwin Mercado. He is the newly installed president and CEO of PhilHealth for precisely 22 days now. Good evening. Welcome to the big story, Dr. Mercado. Thanks for making time for us.
Good evening, ladies, and also to all your listeners and viewers. Hello, can you hear me?
It's very choppy, Dr. Mercado. Let's try that again. Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We hope it holds.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. It just sounds like there's a little bit of a lag. But let's kick things off. First off, why don't you tell us the story of how you came to this position? How were you chosen to be the new PhilHealth CEO and president?
Candidates that were considered. I think I stood out being a clinician and a hospital administrator, and having been exposed to, as I say, on what it feels to be on the other side of the fence, on the receiving end of what PhilHealth has been doing the past years. I've been operating a hospital chain for the past 27 years until I divested in 2021. So it's a long process, and I think my credentials stood out versus the other candidates, and that's why I was chosen.
I actually missed the first part of your answer, but I'm assuming you said that there were some candidates that were narrowed down. But I know which chain you're talking about. You're talking about Quali Med. But what was your reaction when the position was first offered to you? Is this something that you had wanted from the very start?
I actually applied to the board before, which was last year, to be a sectoral representative of the provider. But I thought that with somebody being appointed as a sectoral representative for the provider, that I'm out of the running. But things happened fast. In a matter of less than a month, things progressed. So I was quite surprised, and I really prayed hard and also asked guidance before I plunged in.
Okay, well, you also entered PhilHealth knowing full
Hello?
well. Yes, Dr. Mercado, can you hear us still? Dr. Mercado, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. You entered PhilHealth at the time when...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So when you entered, you already knew like it was a very messy time, right? All these
Okay.
allegations, the zero subsidy, et cetera, et cetera. But what stood out to me when I was reading, all the coverage from your appointment was that you had been on the other side, and therefore you had some suggestions. I was curious, right? When you were on the other side, so to speak, okay. I think we did lose Dr. Mercado. We'll try to call him over the phone and see if that's a better connection. So while we do that, here we go. 22 days to be exact that he has been the PhilHealth CEO and president.
And it's a tough time for him. I mean, entering at the time where there's a lot of issues with PhilHealth financially. And of course, the question on the benefits as well and the subsidy, no subsidy from the budget of course, the government. So challenging times ahead. And he did say, I remember in his first press briefing, is that he's used to being a doctor. So he's used to listening to the problems of patients and he wants to cure them. So that's how he's looking at PhilHealth. He said he wants to see what the problem is, ano yung sakit daw talaga at makahanap ng lunas para doon. So we're going to see if 22 days in, he was already able to see what exactly are the problems that are surrounding the state health insurer. But I think we have Dr. Mercado back. Doc, can you hear us okay now? Doc Mercado? Okay. We're going to try that again.
One of the things I was curious about is, how do health advocates feel? You always hear them loudly online and news reports quoted whenever talk of an appointment, whether it's a DOH secretary or the health advocates happy. And they seem to be very happy with Dr. Mercado. So I'm really excited to see what he will do, especially with the added challenge of zero subsidy and improved case rates. So they actually will.
Well, yeah, there's a long laundry list of issues, right? To begin with, there's the Supreme Court case, which I understand was what came before Dr. Mercado's time, but of course that's still something he has to contend with. 60 billion pesos is what the Associate Justice Amy Javier was questioning, the transfer of that, and obviously we were not privy to that oral argument, but we have heard from a number of sources who were present at yesterday's hearing, and they said that it sounded like Justice Javier had lectured the government on the use of the PhilHealth funds, repeatedly coming back to the point that its funds could only be used exclusively to PhilHealth and should not be diverted to other unrelated projects.
For infrastructure projects, for construction
Correct.
projects.
And so there's going to be a next hearing, and I don't know how many more after that. The next oral argument will be on March 4, but it sounded like at the moment, at least, the case against the transfer of funds, to the remittance of funds back to the state coffers, is looking a little shaky.
Right.
So remember, there's still another 29.9 billion tranche that they haven't transferred back to the Treasury.
Right. So just to refresh everyone's memory, the PhilHealth, the quote-unquote unused excess funds from PhilHealth was amounted to 89.9 billion pesos to be transferred in 3 tranches. 60 billion, you're right, has been transferred already. There's only 29.9 billion. The Supreme Court did release a TRO before the oral argument started, and so the third tranche, which is 29.9 billion, that's safe. As for the 60 billion, will it be returned? Will it not be returned? That's still up in the air because the Supreme Court did not issue the order for them to return it as yet.
Well, that's like 10 steps away because remember, it's a congressional rule. It was Congress who enabled that transfer to begin with, right? They had inserted that in the 2024 GAA that allowed the Treasury to reclaim some of these funds from the GOCC. So can the Supreme Court challenge that congressional rule?
I think that will come up at some point.
That's very far away at this point. But you're right. There is a question of, okay, if the Supreme Court decides to rule against PhilHealth in this case, what happens to the funds that had already been remitted, right? And that's a lot. The other interesting issue that was raised at yesterday's oral argument was, yun nga, as Pawi had just reported, that apparently they hadn't settled all the claims yet before the funds were transferred. So can these really be classified as excess funds is the question. If you had a lot, billions and billions, I don't know the exact amount, but I'm sure they thrashed it out. If you have billions and billions in claims and expenses still to get through, can you really quantify this as excess funds?
I think this also had something to do with the fiscal year, according to the state insurer. There's a cutoff and all of that, and so the math usually gets trapped, or the numbers get trapped, and then they get carried on to the next fiscal year, et cetera, et cetera. And bottom line, I think Supreme Court Justice Ami Lazaro Javier, she wasn't having any of it. She said she was very firm, arguing again that you cannot use PhilHealth money for any other purpose except PhilHealth.
It's for the exclusive use of PhilHealth, exactly.
I think we have Dr. Mendoza back on the phone.
Mercado.
Dr. Mercado.
Yes, I'm sorry. The connection is a bit glitchy.
Okay, we can hear you perfectly now. So let me carry on with a question. I was asking you that one of the points that was interesting when after you took your oath that you said was that you had been for many, many years on the other side of PhilHealth as a doctor, listening to patients. And just from your experience as a practicing doctor and managing a chain of clinics and healthcare facilities, what would you say are your top 3 biggest things that you feel that you really, really want to change in PhilHealth?
That's a very good question. So first of all, I think I should look at the processes and to make sure that the claims adjudication and the payment are on time. I mean, a lot of our difficulties we feel before is the delayed payment of our claims. Number 2 is the accuracy of the data, because the data right now, if you check the hospital's internal data versus PhilHealth data, there are some discrepancies. So our guidance now is one data for both the provider and PhilHealth. And the third issue is the digitalization or the computerization, because a lot of the inefficiencies and the delayed payment is also due to the automation or the lack of it. Currently, PhilHealth has 69 legacy systems working, and then looking at harmonizing all the 69 systems into a more integrated IT network.
Okay, my next follow-up question would be, now that you have been in office for about 22 days, to be exact, do you feel that these 3 items on the top of your list, how doable are they? Are they actually doable? And how long do you think before you can actually achieve this? Or if you see some hurdles in your way, please share.
At least the first 2 objectives, which is the processes and also the single data or financial reporting, is within our control because this is internal. So I'm actually already pushing for a more efficient turnaround time from claims filing to payment. And I was tasked by the board to also look at the process. I actually met with private hospital groups, starting with the big one, a couple of weeks ago, and I asked them for their root cause analysis on why their claims are being denied or returned. And we will align our processes along their root cause analysis so that we are on the same page as regards payment and the payment cycle.
Sorry, speaking of private hospitals, how much is owed to them at this point? Do you know? What is the amount now?
Come again, please. Sorry.
How much is owed to the private hospital associations at this point by PhilHealth?
It's constantly moving because on a day-per-day, the hospitals continuously file claims and we continuously pay. So I don't have yet the exact figures, but in the next few days, we will be announcing some moves on how to address the backlog and the previously denied claims.
Right. Doc, that's what I was talking about, the backlog, because apparently it goes all the way back to COVID time. And last we spoke to PHAP, which was several months ago, granted, they said, was it 6 billion? That was
6 or 9
it was in the
billion,
billions
somewhere
that PhilHealth still owed them. And I was wondering if you had a more accurate figure at this point in time.
Yes, a lot of these are actually denied due to the lapse of the filing period, because there's an automatic denial if you file beyond the 60-day prescription period. So this we're looking at, because if it's denied just because of the lapse in the filing period and not because of fraud, then we think we should be paying all these denied claims.
And changing those policies, those types of policies, like the timeline, is that really within your power internally, meaning you don't have to consult any other government agency for this, or no need for legislation, etc.?
No, these are all internal policies. So it's all our procedures that can be revised by the board. So it's only a board decision, and it does not need like an enabling law or any approval from any other agency, because it's an internal process that is set by the board, and therefore the board can also make amendments to those processes.
Well, Dr. Mercado, aside from being a physician, you have a wealth of experience as a hospital administrator. I wanted to get your opinion on not having subsidy as a state insurer. How long do you think PhilHealth can last with your current resources without any subsidy from the government?
Currently, we have what you call an actuarial analysis of potential potential revenue and also potential payout of benefits. So with the expected revenues coming in, even if without the subsidy coming for the indirect contributors, there's enough to cover yearly expenses. Obviously, that will change depending on the additional benefits that will roll out. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will have more data, and we will be able to maybe present to Congress when the budget season comes in as to how much we need for additional subsidy, which is in fact payment of the premium of the indirect members in subsequent years. And it is in the universal healthcare law that the state, through the intercession of DOH and PhilHealth, can be asked to put or to give supplemental budget to keep the state insurance, the state health insurance afloat.
But Dr. Mercado, I also remember you saying that one of your priorities is to lower out-of-pocket spending of families to 25 to 27% from 45 to 47. But that is a huge leap there. Do you think that's possible within your leadership? How do you intend on doing that, Doctor?
Actually, the lowering of the out-of-pocket expense is not just PhilHealth's job, because the cost of healthcare is not just PhilHealth, but also provided for by the DOH through their budget allocation, and even the local government who also have their local budget allocation, plus the other safety nets provided by the like MAIP or Malasakit and the funds coming from DSWD and the PCSO. So it's a whole-of-nation approach. And I think in the medium term, and this is part of the roadmap presented for the health financing roadmap of the Philippines, is to lower it down to about 30%. So I would like to set a higher target of lowering it down to maybe 25 to 27%. But I think 30% is doable in the short term, or in the medium term, which is 3-4 years.
Well, I, for one, can tell you that when you were announced, most of the medical community that we know were pretty happy. We spoke to Dr. Mingita Padilla on our sister program, StoryCon, and she said that most of her peers were happy that you were installed, but there is a big but there. She says it is not enough to replace the president or CEO, that you have to clean up the entire executive, the executive committee. How much of a hand or how much of a leeway do you have right now to do that?
We announced internally in the corporation that we're here to bridge and heal, and we're not here to do any witch hunting. But obviously, moving forward, if we set metrics and we will measure the outcomes and the performance of the different members of the whole, not just the ExCom, but the whole organization, then accountability and meritocracy will be top of my priority.
So for now, the entire execom stays.
Can come again, please? Sorry.
So for now, the entire executive committee stays. No one is getting reshuffled.
For now, especially to ensure continuity and to also make sure that the programs that have been approved recently is being rolled out properly and efficiently. We're giving marching orders in terms of what should be done in the short term to the existing ExCom.
And of course, PhilHealth is a fund, and when funds are in question, we talk about actuarial life. I believe in all the brouhaha late last year, coming into this year, some reporters were actually trying to look for the head actuarial of PhilHealth, to try to maybe send some questions. Have you spoken and sat down with the actuarial departments, with the actuaries there, and what did they tell you in terms of actuarial life? How is PhilHealth doing, Doc?
The big issue right now is what you call the insurance contract liability, which is it's not actually a liability that is due and demandable, or in economic or accounting terms, it's a paper loss. So there's a lot of debate as to how to treat the ICL or this future liability of a state health insurance like PhilHealth. It's not the same as a pension fund or a private insurance, and we're even going all the way up to the PIC, which is a branch of the PICPA, which is the body that interprets all these new accounting rules. So we are still waiting for the final sort of definition, because as I said, the state insurance, social health insurance is different from a private health insurance or a pension fund.
And Dr. Mercado, what about wastage? This is something that you also touched on when you assumed office. You did say you wanted to address wastage in PhilHealth. Do you already have an idea on how much wastage that PhilHealth has? And could that be redirected to the expansion, the enhancement of the benefits of members?
Yes, of course. Any penny saved or any centavo saved can go towards expanding our benefits. I'm looking at the process and the manpower required on adjudicating cases. Because once you reject a case or denied a claim, then it goes back to the hospital and it's refiled. So imagine the paperwork, the man hours needed to reprocess and also to re-adjudicate or to look at whether the claims is valid or not. But most of these claims are, again, not just the problem, not just to be blamed to PhilHealth, because some are due to improper filing or incomplete filing from the hospitals. That's why we're asking the hospitals to do their root cause analysis, and together we align our processes such that these denied or returned to hospital claims are limited. So just with that back and forth sending the claims, I think if we make it efficient that you don't the claims are complete whenever they are filed, then that's a lot of reduction in terms of man hours and also in terms of cost, especially for your paperwork and also your computer work.
let me circle back to your other previous answer. You said you have three priorities: improve claims and benefits process, improve accuracy of data, and third, digitalization. You didn't give us a sense of how difficult the third priority will be. And I already have a sense because coming back to Dr. Mingita Padilla, she flagged that to us as one of the major issues at PhilHealth. She said you need to digitalize in order to minimize the corruption. So now that you're in position, what's the sense that you're getting in terms of how difficult it's going to be to implement nationwide?
Yeah, I went through a digitalization process as a CEO of Qualimed before, and really it takes time. And this is an off-the-shelf system that we installed because there's a lot of customization, debugging, and shifting from one system to another entails a very strict project management process. So for PhilHealth, the bid that is going on is to really build the data from ground up. So it's not an off-the-shelf system. It's going to be built and customized according to the processes that currently are being practiced in PhilHealth. So I imagine it would take about a year and a half to do it. But right now, even with the legacy system, we should already do some changes, and especially for the claims adjudication and the turnaround time.
May pushback ba, Doc? Is there pushback from within in your plan to digitalize everything?
Not really. In fact, the people inside are very supportive. I think it's more if you may call it, the system architecture that needs to be thought of really in depth.
One last question. You mentioned earlier that last week you already met with some of the biggest top hospitals. I believe these are 8 private hospital groups. I just want to get a sense of how that meeting went, Dr. Mercado, were they amenable to your suggestions? I believe Dr. Paragas mentioned in another interview that you were actually asking them to improve coverage and make healthcare more accessible, just primary care, more accessible to everyone, regardless of, I suppose, socioeconomic status.
Yes. Number one, I was asking them to help out, convince the doctor that every time we improve our benefit package and expand our support value, that the doctors really participate and also take out from their out-of-pocket professional fees the additional coverage that we are giving in terms of the expanded benefit. We don't have control of the professional fees of the doctors, except for some V package which are contracted out on a fixed basis. As regards the primary care, I really convinced the private group that it's worth looking at, and we will help them go up to a certain economies of scale, because if you're only enrolling a few primary care patients or members, then it does not make any economic sense. But we're looking at institutional accounts which can be attributed or enrolled to them on a what we call batch enrollment basis.
Okay.
So this may include schools or state universities or corporations.
Yeah.
And I think they are heeding my call, and I think they will already take on the challenge of also putting up primary care clinics.
Right. That is very good to hear. We'll leave that there for now. We'll call you back in another time. Thank you so much for your time tonight. PhilHealth President and CEO, Dr. Edwin Mercado.
Right, it's just about time to pause for another quick break, but right after that, the latest SWS survey reveals 8 administration bets leading the Senate race. Who else made it to the Magic 12? That story's next. Keep it here. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking around with us here on The Big Story. Another day, and we've got another senatorial survey on our hands, this time from the social weather stations as commissioned by the Strat-based group. Still leading the polls is ACT-CIS Representative Erwin Tulfo with 45% voter preference. Ranked second and third are re-electionists Senators Bongo and Lito Lapid with 36%, followed by former Senate President Tito Soto and broadcaster Ben Tulfo. Senator Bong Revilla is a big gainer, coming in at 6th to 7th from 11th place just last month, and is now tied with re-electionist Senator Pia Cayetano. Rounding off the top 12 are re-electionist Senator Bato de la Rosa, former Senators Ping Lacson and Manny Pacquiao, Makati Mayor Abby Binay, and TV host Willie Revillame. The SWS survey was conducted between February 15 and 19 among 1,800 registered voters with a margin of error of plus or minus 2%. 8 candidates from the administration coalition remain in the Magic 12, but Strat-based President Dindo Manhit said that the Alianza may need to reassess its strategy to secure more seats.
When you look at the result of social weather station, you would see at least 8 of the administration candidate is in the Magic 12, but at least number 13 and 14 are what we call within the margin of error. So it can swing to be at 9 or 10 for the administration, but it also needs to be seen that the administration coalition also needs to reflect because they came out strong, but how come Bongo is way up there?
Speaking of frontrunners, a new disqualification case has been filed against ACT-CIS Representative Erwin Tulfo.
May nabanggit din tungkol sa citizenship, but then hindi ko pa alam kung gaano kalalim yung diskusyon tungkol sa issue ng citizenship, but nakasento talaga siya sa issue ng political dynasty.
The petition was filed by disbarred lawyer Berteni Kataluang Kausing and Graft-Free Philippine Foundation represented by Diosdado Villar Calonge. The petitioner said Tulfo should be disqualified from the 2025 Senate race as the lawmaker is still suffering from the 20-year disqualification caused by the moral turpitude clause in 4 counts of libel. As to the issue of citizenship, Tulfo has previously admitted to becoming a U.S. citizen in 1988 but said he regained his Filipino citizenship in 2022. Now, the first disqualification case covered not just Erwin but also his brother Ben, sister Wanda Tulfo Teo, and a number of other relatives. COMELEC Chair George Garcia said they expect the disposition of the First Division of COMELEC on this case by Monday.
Either to issue summons, mabigyan ng hindi naman due course, kung hindi okay proceed tayo, or number 2, pwede ma-dismiss ka agad outright ang petisyon dahil sa may maaaring makita ng mga defects doon sa naturang mga petisyon.
Let's have an expert weigh in on this. Joining us on the line is election lawyer, Attorney Romy Macalintal. Good evening, Attorney. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, good evening, ladies, and good evening to all your televiewers and listeners.
What do you think of all these disqualification cases, of course, filed against a front runner? We usually see the front runner in any poll or any survey leading up to an election, suffering from the most attacks. Do you think there are grounds in any of these cases? I'm talking about the citizenship issue. There's also a political dynasty issue levied against not just Erwin Tulfo, but the entire Tulfo clan that are running. There's also the moral turpitude arising from his libel case, and supposedly this holds for 20 years. Are these all sufficient grounds, Attorney?
Well, first on the issue of political dynasty, well, I agree with the COMELEC chairman that the COMELEC may dismiss outright the said petition on the ground of political dynasty, because political dynasty cannot be an issue for disqualification as there is no law yet passed by Congress defining what political dynasty is all about. In other words, as long as there is no law disqualifying a candidate on ground political dynasty, that could not be used against the Tulfo brothers. Otherwise, a political dynasty could be an issue, then there will be a lot of disqualification cases against various candidates who are running now, with most of the relatives also running with them. The Marcoses, for instance, the Romualdeses, and other candidates with so many candidates or relatives running for different positions. Now, insofar as the citizenship issue is concerned, if that is raised, then it is not for Tulfo to prove that he is a Filipino citizen. It is for the petitioner to prove that he is not a Filipino citizen. So the burden of proof is on the petitioner to prove that Tulfo is not a natural-born Filipino citizen. The complaint filed against Tulfo before the Commission on Appointments and the decision of the CA in that particular case could not be the basis of disqualifying him because there is no proof to show that he was disqualified or his nomination was not approved on ground that he is not a natural-born Filipino citizen. Sa madaling salita, walang evidence na nagpapatunay na hindi siya natural-born Filipino citizen. And on the issue of, what do you call this, the other one? The libel case.
Yes.
Well, the disqualification case should have been filed at least 5 days after he filed his certificate of candidacy. If that would be filed today, that would be too late for the day for the petitioners. Now, if they want to pursue that case, they have to wait until Tulfo is proclaimed as senator. And the moment he is proclaimed as senator, that will be the time to file a disqualification case against him. Not a regular disqualification before the COMELEC, but a petition for quo warranto, meaning the position is now being contested on ground of lack of qualification, and the case should be filed with the Senate Electoral Tribunal. So all of this could be dismissed by the COMELEC on ground of lack of cause of action or for having been filed out of time.
So only the citizenship issue could actually move forward amongst all these cases. But of course, as you mentioned, the burden of proof lies with the accuser.
Yes, but the issue of citizenship should have been raised long before. You know, they only have 5 or 10 days to file that petition to deny due course, at least 10 days upon the filing of the certificate of candidacy, and it has long prescribed. So at present, the citizenship issue could no longer be raised against Mr. Tulfo. But in case he wins and duly proclaimed, the petition that could be filed is a petition for quo warranto to question his qualification to sit as a senator. Now, he cannot be disqualified as a candidate anymore because the time to file the said petition has long expired.
Attorney, that's an actual rule. You can only file a petition against questioning somebody's citizenship within 10 days.
Yes, as a candidate,
Okay.
there is a period to file that is under the Common Rules of Procedure. Now, if you fail to file the disqualification within that period, then you have to wait until such time that he is proclaimed. So, kailangan maghintay sila na ma-proclaim, then file a petition for quo warranto if there is really a disqualification ground.
What's the rationale behind that? Help us understand as lay people, Attorney Makalintal. Kasi kung isipin natin, no, within 5 to 10 days after filing of COC, that doesn't also give whoever wants to file the disqualification case a lot of time to collect evidence, etc., etc. Otherwise, they might have to have a vendetta for a long time or gathered all these evidence beforehand, right? But what's the rationale here? Help us understand.
Well, there must be a limit as to the time of the filing because the COMELEC has to make an immediate decision as to whether or not a candidate should be disqualified. Otherwise, it might run out of time. For instance, Tulfo is disqualified now. How can you erase his name from the ballot? If his name is already on the ballot, cannot be. The voters could still vote for him. And furthermore, any decision on disqualification case decided by the COMELEC is not yet final and executory. It could still be appealed to the Supreme Court. And the moment that the petition is filed with the Supreme Court, then the decision of the COMELEC cannot yet be implemented.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why if you have a problem against a particular candidate, there is a specific period within which to file the same. And if they are elected, there is also a period to file the same. It's 10 days upon proclamation. If a petition is not filed against a winning candidate after his proclamation, then they lost all the privileges to file the said petition.
Okay, Attorney, just one question for me. Just wanted to get your thoughts. How do you think the public will perceive this legal challenge? Do you think it will affect the credibility and the suitability of Mr. Erwin Tulfo for office, considering na consistent, naman po siya, frontrunner sa mga survey?
Palagay ko hindi na yan pakikinggan ng ating mga botante. Kasi yung mga botante naman natin, hindi nila pinapansin yung mga ganyang mga accusations. They would always say that these are only political gimmicks because if they had any evidence against him, they should have filed it earlier. And the fact that the Tulfo brothers are very popular, I don't think that will affect the votes that will be cast for them in their favor.
All right, well, thank you so much for taking our call tonight and for shedding some
Maraming
light.
salamat sa inyo at maraming salamat sa inyong mga tagapakinig. And it's a great honor and a privilege to be talking with all you ladies. Salamat po. Magandang gabi sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, Attorney.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Romy Macalintal. For sure, we will be calling in, phone-in questions throughout this election
As the election plays out.
All right, I think we have run out of time, and that's all the time we have for the big story on this Wednesday night.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.